not an ancient standing stone or Neolithic monument, but nevertheless it's one of the great pillars of Brittany's culture, the galette. These pancakes have been eaten in this corner of France for over 9,000 years. Each family has its own recipe, and every good Breton has to learn the art of frying and flipping on the famous round hot plate. There are now even schools where you can learn. In the regional capital Rennes, fans of the savoury delight are now racing to become master pancake makers themselves.
When you have problems at the hot plate, this is what can happen. Parts of the galette will split. The best finished product is the one that you've mastered perfectly. Look, you can see on the edges there's no difference in the thickness between the sides and the middle. Look here carefully. I can crease the galette and reopen it without having anything crack or break. We're now going to put together our pancake mixture for tomorrow.
The galette is a speciality of northern Brittany. In the south, they still eat savoury pancakes, but they're made using a blend of flours. The two are not to be confused. Only the real galette is made using 100% buckwheat flour.
Around the 15th century, buckwheat first started to be grown in Brittany. That replaced wheat, which was the noble wheat reserved for the lords and ladies. Today, though, the tables have really turned. Buckwheat is much more expensive than ordinary flour, but back then, buckwheat galettes were really just a staple food, one that replaced bread for many peasants.
It was during the Middle Ages that people here started growing buckwheat to make sure they had enough to eat. It's cheaper than ordinary wheat and grows twice as fast, in just 100 days. It's also a cereal that can adapt itself to the least fertile ground and produces the famous black wheat that was long known as the poor man's wheat. Ironically, buckwheat flour nowadays is twice the price of ordinary white flour. Across Brittany, a handful of millers still grind this special flour in the traditional way.
If you split the head in two, you have a grain and several outer layers that protect it, which we call the husk of the buckwheat. Our job is to extract the grain, to grind it as fine as possible, and also to bash all the layers of the husk, which will give this flour its unique flavor, the taste of buckwheat.
To make a good quality sack of flour, several key steps have to be respected. The buckwheat grains are washed, crushed, then sifted several times to ensure that only the finest are kept.
As millers, we choose the texture of the grain that we want. That's our unique recipe. It's our little secret, if you like. We make all kinds of flour here, be they more or less coarse, more or less fine, more or less flavoursome. It's all about assembling, in fact, always looking for flavour and taste.
But to make the best possible pancake, you don't just need the right flour.
That's really starting to look like something now.
You also need the right skills. Time to go back to school.
So we start off in front of the mixture, you gather it all back up, and then we come backwards and find the mixture.
To smooth out the mixture, you have to use the roselle, the magic tool used by pancake makers, as well as mastering the art of moving your elbows.
So now we're going to move the mixture, and you can see that it's the elbow that's doing all the work, not the wrist.
It's a delicate movement that some 400 students learn here every year.
The skill behind using the roselle is really special. It's ancestral, in fact. And there's no real connection with any other culinary art. When pastry chefs and cooks come to this school, they can't master it any quicker than the others, because it's a unique skill. It's one that you just have to learn and get to grips with, and that can take time. The perfect pancake doesn't exist, because it's all just a question of taste. And honestly, there's no one single way to look at pancake making. There are as many ways as there are people in Brittany, and around here we say there is one recipe for every village. There are therefore many, many different pancake recipes.
A few kilometres outside Rennes, in the village of Ede, Evelyn and her daughter Nina run one of the 2,500 creperies that can be found across Brittany.
So I used the method taught at the pancake school, which says you shouldn't move your wrist. I've modified it a little bit, obviously. I might tap it with my fingers, because I like to move it a little bit.
I grew up with my grandmother who used to make galettes over the fireplace, and I don't know, they're part of my childhood. I just have this desire to pass on this Breton tradition. These things need to be kept alive.